We need to be making deeper connections so that we can find people who have aligned values with us. That's one key element of finding a good partner. Back in 1995, the research shows that 65% of couples got together through family and friend connections, those communities, and then additionally through churches, through other organizations. It was this massive, at least 80% of people connected through their communities in some way, or the relationships they had. Now, and then it was about 12% of people connected through some sort of dating system or a dating network back then. We didn't fully have computer dating the way that we do now. The research shows that has flipped. Now it's 12% combined through family and friends, with 65% of people now connecting through dating apps. That's a huge reversal in only, 30 years? And that's why people are not finding happy people that are compatible, because you are going alone into the wilderness, hoping you will find a stranger, as if you're selecting something off of Amazon. And then you hope that when it arrives, it's what you're looking for. It's not. You send it back. You try to get another one. You do that 500 times. And then, yes, you run out of time. You run out of eggs, whatever it may be. Yes, absolutely. Connecting through your networks, connecting maybe through your religious institutions, connecting through family and friends, people with shared values. What's cool about that is you get 20 years of data on those people. So you know them, or the people you care about know them, and they can bring you the right person.
Well, there's also more to it, right? So when you say you run out of time, you don't run out of time. You run out of hope. Right? This is actually the transaction that happens is based on hope. And we had a great podcast about that with Adam a little bit earlier. And the core essence of this is that in a relationship which is broken, the anxious and the avoidance cycle, often men are avoidant. I tend to be more on that side. He diagnosed me on a podcast. But if you're more avoidant, then you simply don't believe that the thing you want is possible. Or if you do, it's so far away. It's like tucked so far behind these like piles and piles and piles of armor that you've built up that you just try to preserve that hope to the very last end, that eventually you just kind of live without it. And when you do meet somebody and you meet a woman who is able to spark that hope in you, that connection starts fostering. But that also means that the woman must preserve it herself. And we're talking about is by going to a believing church or believing community. I like to extrapolate the church component, although I'm very Christian, I agree with that strongly. But for the sake of everybody else who may not be or is going on that path, let's even take the church out of it. You have to have a community which fosters hope, which fosters belief, which gives you something that you say, things are going to be okay, and I can choose to trust and to have faith. So a woman who has faith can spark that in a man. I don't think a man can spark that on his own.
I also think that there are a lot of men and women who do not feel that spark with the opposite sex because they are sexually numb from SSRIs.
That's pretty awful. Yes.
That is a massive problem that no one wants to talk about, that within a week of being on SSRIs, less than 2 weeks of being on SSRIs, you could start experiencing genital numbness, no interest in the opposite sex. And this is the scariest part. It never goes away. We are seeing a huge amount of people that are coming forward saying, being on SSRIs for a short amount of time in high school, in college, has left me with a completely numb sex life for the rest of my life, and they have to live with it. It's a whole syndrome that is barely being discussed. Well, it's not being discussed by doctors when they're prescribing it. Nobody is telling people, that there is a risk of you never being able to enjoy sex if you take this pill, even temporarily. No one's telling them. And you have now 7-year-olds who they have agreed can start taking Lexapro. 7 years old taking Lexapro. Now imagine the relationship issues that people who are on antidepressants from 7 years old are going to experience in Generation A.
Now, for the people at home, you may not realize this, but the research shows that about 25% of American women are taking medications for psychological issues. A lot of women are prescribed SSRIs even just for basic biological things, for their periods, for stuff like that. So this is a gigantic issue that a tremendous number of people are facing, way more than we can even imagine.
Well, we're putting girls on birth control at 14, 15 years old. Was one of the main side effects of birth control. Your risk of depression doubles. Your risk of suicide triples. And the antidote for that is not to get off the birth control pill, which it is to prescribe you Lexapro or another SSRI to deal with that problem. You are medicalizing an entire generation, and we've never seen more mental health issues. We've never seen more physical issues, chronic disease, the food, the pills. all of this. It's very demonic. It's demonic culture, to be honest with you.
And it's also getting sourced in many ways out of two things. One, the complete destruction of the family, of the traditional family. The reason you are depressed as a kid, in my firm belief, is not that something magically went wrong in your brain. You're fine up till 6. All of a sudden, boom, like the depressive spiral starts. No, it's usually because there is some break of attachment and you simply cannot cope. And yes, there can be a kind of a tolerance period and then a tip over, but that is the cause. And then also, it is this inability to help teach kids how to regulate themselves, this inability for them to come in and understand that it's okay to be uncomfortable and you can get over it, that not everything needs to be immediately fixed, that these negative emotions are just a part of life that you just need to learn how to manage at a small scale so you can learn them later on, how to manage them at a bigger scale. Not give a pill, not give like an immediate, here's a gift, here's a video game, here is, whatever, sugar just to spike yourself out of it. It's like, no, let's learn, how to keep our families functional as systems that protect us, but also as systems that grow us into adults that can be responsible without having to run to pills, without having to run to sex, to drugs in order to fix the problems.
Well, and all of this weaves together. In my clinical experience working with kids, working with families, they would start off with attachment issues early on in childhood because their parents didn't know how to give them that love and that nurturing. So then as they grow up nervous and anxious, they develop generalized anxiety disorder. And then it sort of goes under the surface. People say, wow, you're really dedicated to your schoolwork. You're a perfectionist. You're really driven. You're pretty closed off. But then once they hit 12, anywhere from 12 to 16, and they get into those teenage depressive years where it's just totally normal for an entire species. Your teenagers just become suicidally depressed. Completely normal. So at that point, you crash because you no longer have hope that you're ever going to escape from that fear. And bad things keep happening. And as the teenage depression rolls on, you become even more anxious because bad things keep happening. Now you're trying to build romantic relationships, trying to have sexual relationships. That's getting way more complicated and way more terrifying. So your attachment issues get even worse. And it just rolls into your 20s. It rolls into your 30s. Yes, we're putting people on antidepressants. Yes, we're putting them on birth control. We're putting them on anti-anxiety. Then we're throwing them in front of dopamine machines with your phone constantly in your face all the time. And we aren't helping them regulate themselves. It's a gigantic spiral that begins at birth. If you like this clip, I know you're going to enjoy the full episode. You can watch it right here.